and welcome to Wise Women Wednesday at night. I am here so excited to bring to you something that's been in the works for over a year. The incredible Megs Gelfgot, international speaker, TEDx speaker, and all around badass woman inspiring people around the globe. Megs has been the founder of Keep Her Wild. She is also the author of the Hustle and Lift Candle. If you're not following her, you should, because it's amazing. But Megs and I met in a really incredible way. We were trying to bring a community of female founders together to honestly support each other, empower each other, and find ways to collaborate. And Megs and I, our first foray into collaboration was swiftly swept away by COVID-19, trying to do something big for International Women's Day last year. And this year, we decided to really lean into the Go Red for Women element and really try to do as much as we could to raise awareness and funds for women's heart disease, which you'll find is something that is really near and dear, pun intended, to Meg's heart. And so I'm so honored to have you here today, Megs, and to be able to share your story of resilience, of empowerment, and being able to also just introduce you to this incredible community and bring your community and introduce them to Wise. This is awesome.
Well, Stevie, thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here. As Stevie said, this has been like some time in the making to get this off the ground.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This is awesome. Well, I'm really excited to just kind of dive in a little bit and have you share, more about Keep Her Wild as we kind of get diving in. But I wanted to just share with everybody kind of the rules of the road as we do these with Wise Wellness Guild. First off, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. If you've got a burning question that you really want to ask and you want to come off of mute, by all means, this is about an interactive and engaging experience. But what we do ask is that, you do engage. This is an awesome opportunity for us to learn a lot more about each other, about kind of what we're going through as humans in this capacity, and also to be able to leverage this amazing network of people who are here and on Facebook Live. So the first thing I wanted to do is just really make sure that you also know, I'm going to flash up something as we kind of dive in. We know that the link for Go Red for Women was not working for some of you. So if you want to, you can find us on Venmo. So we're at Wise Wellness Guild, which I'll share with you also in the chat. But the really amazing thing about Go Red for Women is that we know that 1 in 3 women are unfortunately impacted by heart disease, and 1 in 3 women's lives are taken every year. The wonderful part about this is that 80% of it is completely, we can prevent it. And I know that there are some cases that this is hereditary, some of this is disease that you cannot impact, but so much of it is just about driving awareness and telling amazing stories. And that's what we're really going to find today with Megs, is she's not only been through a lot of shit in her life, but the way she's handled it just with incredible resilience and grace, and being willing to come in and tell incredible stories about her life is the part that I think you're going to find the most inspiring. So Megs, go ahead and take it away. I'm going to go ahead and get you queued up, and that way we can share your story.
I mean, is Stevie not the ultimate hype woman? I just need Stevie in my life introducing me, because I feel great right now. My goodness. So for our guys and girls on the line, and I know that we have some Keep Her Wild lives coming to us from New Zealand, an inappropriate hour. So thanks for logging on too, guys. Appreciate it. So here we are, St. Patrick's Day, which we didn't realize when we scheduled this, but we're so glad that you guys are here. Cue the slow clap for us. It's been a month, ladies specifically. We had ourselves International Women's Day, all the slow clapping, and this is great for us. Arguably the best time in history to be a woman, continuing to close the wage gap, more females in business. It's great. And we're excited. You got national campaigns about love your body, love yourself. There's all kinds of good stuff happening. And yet, we're in the midst of some of the highest levels of anxiety, depression, feeling stuck in all of history. Now, granted, we're really tracking it now in a way that we weren't before. But something's happening where it's a great time to thrive, and yet people are suffering. And this was even before COVID. Understandably, COVID made it 10 times harder. So today we're going to talk about resilience, right? We're going to talk about lockdown, not the fun part of lockdown where people are all hyped up on Tiger King, but now kind of coming out of it. Yes, we have a vaccine, but people are still trying to find their way. You know, life became difficult in a way that we could never even fathom. Maybe you have kids at home, suddenly you're a full-time employee and you're also, you know, a teacher suddenly. I know I had to do that for a while. Not great at it. I tell you, my multitasking leaves a little something to be desired. And so today, as we're talking about cultivating resilience, you can't have resilience to keep moving forward without the adversity that stops us in our tracks. You know, adversity is promised to all of us, no matter your race, your job, your marital status. In one form or another, it's coming for you. Failure, heartache, illness, grief, loss, bullying, divorce, discrimination, tragedy, infertility, disappointment, it is coming. But today is not about worrying about what's around the corner, what's the next challenge that's arise, because that's promised. We know it's coming, it's a guarantee. It's about how we see adversity, how we see ourselves, our capacity, our ability to endure well, our worth, our standards. Today is about what happens when you're stuck. You're just stuck. No, it's not about COVID. Maybe you hate your job. Your marriage is falling apart. It's struggling. You have no clue what you're doing in life. Have you ever had those coffee dates with a friend? You're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I know there's plenty of people on the line right now who have heard me say those things at one point or another. Maybe you're trying to lose weight. You're drowning financially. Whatever's happening, whatever area that feels like an actual dumpster fire, right? You're trapped. This session is for you. You know, Stevie talked about resilience, and I'm going to have an opportunity to share a little bit about my story. But what's most impactful for my story is not when things were going well, but when things were going terribly, terribly wrong. You know, winning in business, in life, in relationships, that doesn't just happen on accident, right? We don't just like fall ass backwards into that. There are formulas. Successful people, teams, businesses, they all have the same traits, disciplines, rhythms. And guess what? They're simple. They're not easy. They're hard. And that's why it's so uncommon to be uncommon. But it's possible for anyone at any time to cultivate those habits. That's why we're here today. So friends, I'm asking you to raise your personal standard for the next 30 minutes. You can sit there kind of listening. Maybe you're scrolling Instagram. You got Netflix playing in the background. That's the easy route. That's the common route. But today we're talking about going to new places, better places, digging deeper in our capacity. And we don't get there by staying in the same state, right? How can you expect to usher in exceptional and rise above average thoughts, average execution standards, if you can't demand more from yourself for 30 minutes of listening? Yeah, I have to say this to corporate groups all the time. Let me tell you, those execs don't care for it at first. So put your phone away, close your email, grab an actual piece of paper and a pen. Yes, paper. Sit up, take a couple deep breaths, but not like those like shallow ones, like those deep diaphragm breaths. Fill them up all the way, let them out. Because today is about showing up differently, thinking differently. And in return, I'll share some of my story and the tools that will impact the quality of your life now. A roadmap to push through stagnation, procrastination, failure, burnout, to hone resilience as if it were a muscle, right? And tap into capacity to win even in the face of adversity, because that's when it matters. So you want to be stronger, you want to be more courageous, you want to transform an area of your life, improve your marriage, break an addiction. If you're committed to seeing lasting change, buckle up, I got something for you. We're going to raise the standard in the small things right now so you can win in the big things. So on your paper, I want you to write down 3 areas of your life that have to improve. And no, I'm not talking about, you know what, I just want to be healthier. Megs, I want to be healthier. I need specificity. I want that ugly stuff that you don't talk about. That thing that you said you were going to do, but you never started. That area you told yourself, I'm going to do better, and you didn't. That new routine, I'm on it, let's go. 48 hours in, you quit. This is a gut check. These notes are just for you. 3 things, write them down. See, most people, they go through life, myself included, playing it safe on some level. They're capable of more, but they never get to that next level. They never get out of their own way. And following the crowd, they become addicted to mediocrity. It influences their behaviors, their patterns. And so I'm here, hello, to encourage you that no matter your past, and friends, we've all got one. This isn't about judgment, right? We all have stuff behind us that we're embarrassed of, shamed by. It's not about that. When you decide to win, because it is a decision, your life will change, period. It's setting an intention for greatness and then executing like your dreams depend on it. It's a big correlation. See, I'm intimately familiar with how our level of personal ownership correlates with our present circumstances. I've had a view, front row, from both sides of that. Procrastinating, dropping the ball, not getting basic stuff done, playing hooky when, I couldn't afford to at the time. And my life and career reflected that laziness, let's call it what it is. When I assumed personal ownership, one small decision at a time, usually involved stepping out of my comfort zone to demand a little more for myself. It created momentum and progress that led to more decisions, more small steps, more disciplines until my life was transformed. So, as Stevie said, I had an opportunity to share some of my story on a TED Talk. And it was an amazing experience, which I'll talk briefly about here in a minute. But the fact of the matter is, ownership of our circumstances and focusing on what we can control, developing a growth mindset to persevere, that's the beginnings of resilience. It's not just one thing, it's a couple of things working together consistently. You're not too old, it's not too late to raise the standard, no matter your past. And we've all got one. That's the thing. You're not a victim to your past, because we've all got one. We all have a story. See, everything I wanted was on the other side of self-discipline. It's giving command of your mind to choose actions within your own best self-interest. It's not a punishment. It's delayed gratification for long-term self-respect and self-esteem. So tonight is not a quick fix. I don't want you to think that you're going to be on here for 30 minutes and that you have all the answers. Nope. You're not leaving here with that hack to success. You're going to earn it. And in that process, you're going to develop grit, self-worth, bolstered, courage revealed, and confidence shaped. And it starts and it ends with ownership. See, ownership is a choice to take that responsibility for what's happening in our world. It puts us back in the driver's seat to impact our circumstances. It's the first step in improving the quality of our life by assuming responsibility for the solutions. Write that down. It's assuming responsibility for the solutions. What went wrong? How can I fix it? It's about this time. I'm gonna have some people going, Megs, that's how people talk to me. Megs, you don't understand. You don't get it. I'm burned out. I'm overwhelmed. I have these kids, they're just running around. I'm stressed. I have a to-do list. It's like so long. You don't even know. All these things are going wrong. It's not even my fault. And you know that sound familiar? Have you heard someone talk to you like that? Maybe you talk like that? I can't hear anything about thriving. I'm just trying to survive. Just trying to survive. It's difficult. It sounds really challenging. It sounds like a hard way to live when you're at the whims of the whirlwind around you, right? 3 cliff notes on today. Number 1, the power of belief and its impact on achieving the right outcome. Number 2, the quality and priority of your personal standards. Do you have any? Do you have any personal standards or disciplines in place to fuel success? Number 3, execution of action. How to get it done. Are you busy with the right things? You know, people who are just always busy, but it's like with nonsense. Like, what do you do all day? Movement is not progress. Are you looking at the right scoreboard? A great plan, it's meaningless if you can't execute. We all know these like idea people. They got a million ideas. Show me something. You got to do it. Viktor Frankl. I think Stu's going to put a slide up here. And he's an Austrian psychologist. He's a neurologist, philosopher. This guy's amazing. He's got a book, A Man's Search for Meaning. So his story, he was in the Holocaust. He's taken to a death camp. He survives. His book really details why people survived. And it came down to hope. His quote, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. I'm sorry, what? This guy was in a death camp. I mean, we had lockdown for a bit. How could he have hope? Ownership, it's not about blame. Things happen out of our control. Exhibit 1, Pandemic 101. Ownership of the problem puts you in a resourceful position to command authority of solutions because you're focusing on what we can control. And it's 3 things, write these down: your attitude, your work ethic, and your consistency. You will hear a lot of that tonight. Your attitude, your work ethic, and your consistency. It doesn't mean that things aren't going to go sideways. They are. How are you showing up? Now, again, this is about the time you were like, Megs, you hear it, you hear the voice. Megs, these are unprecedented times. Nobody thrives when things are at their darkest. Nobody uses it for a springboard for greatness. I agree to disagree. My favorite movies, that is the plot line. Some of the most successful movies, that's the plot line, is the hero's journey. The team that had every strike against them, the hits kept coming. They didn't have the resources, they didn't get the break, tragedy, circumstances, it almost ended it. And yet, against all odds, they came through, they survived, they won. You're right, nobody has a good story when things are hard, when things are unprecedented. I want you to think about a lifeboat for a second. There's 4 spots in this lifeboat. Who are you filling those seats with? Who are you putting in it? And no, this isn't like, oh, it's my husband or it's my family. What are the characteristics? What would they have? Who would they be to give you the best chance of survival? I know mine is full of capable, resourceful, resilient people who are willing to own the problem and they're willing to do whatever it takes to make sure they make it. You don't see someone on that lifeboat who's like, I've never rowed a boat before. I don't know what I'm doing. That's not the person that I want sitting next to me. See, the individuals or the teams in these movies and these stories of a hero's journey that we love so much, these people that are exceptional, that we are so inspired by, they didn't start out that way. They lacked the skills that they needed at the end when it was day one. They grew in resolve and skills because of difficulty. I'll take someone who is eager and hungry to learn over someone who has it all figured out, right? They got all the answers. It's not their fault. Very ego-driven. See, most people are passive bystanders in their circumstances. They are the victim of every challenge that comes their way. It's not fair. Who said it was? Welcome to life. Welcome. There's more, I promise. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Carl Jung. It's a great quote. So it's about this time, and you're like, I'm sorry, who is this again? So I had an opportunity, as Stephen mentioned, to give my story on a TED Talk. I'm going to give you guys the abridged version for those of you who aren't familiar with it. So I'm living the suburbia success story, right? I'm a new mom, successful in the fitness industry, married. And it was good. Can't complain. Like, it was like suburban guilt, right? Like, I don't know, it was fine. But there was something intrinsic inside of me that just was like dying. It was just soul sucking. And that sounds a little dramatic to say, but at the time, there really was this parallel guilt of like, I have nothing to be like sad about. Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel like I'm leaving something on the table? And I couldn't articulate what it was, but I just knew that it needed to change. So through a series of events, I decided that, now is the time to pick up skateboarding. And for those of you in Cincinnati, I live in Indian Hill. There's a lot of skateboarding from the mom community over here. There's not. But it was this mini rebellion of like reclaiming something wild inside of me. Like, it was going to be this bridge to reconnect with this like capable, fierce woman that I felt like I lost somewhere along the way. Like, I had this identity of a wife and a mom and in business, and it just kind of felt like it was on autopilot. And at the time, I've kind of gone back and really marinated on like, why did I think skateboarding was going to be the answer? To this day, I actually don't have an answer for that. Maybe it was like some God intervention for me or something, but it changed everything. And it changed how I showed up. I went to an empty parking lot with a skateboard, right? And just a mind to do it and ready to fail. Like, when was the last time that you were excited to like learn something new and fail, possibly get hurt? There was a lot of that. Trust me, there was a lot of that. But it was amazing. It was amazing because I was tested physically, emotionally, in ways that I wasn't in my everyday life. And it reminded me of my capacity, that I'm not meant to be fearless, right? And I think that there's a lot of Pinterest quotes that go around like, fearless and this, that. No, like, it sucked. Like, I had a ton of fear, but I was courageous enough to go for it. And so these kind of small little things helped me remember who I was, pushing through critics, right? Of the family and friends variety. It took me a very long time to go to skate parks and be actually out of the car. It took me 8 trips. And even then, the line in my TED Talk that people still quote to me to this day when they send me messages to talk about the first time that I actually got out of the car, the skate park, was my worst case scenario. Some kid named Spencer heckles me for being a beginner. To this day, right, people will write me 1 of 2 letters identifying with that, like, yeah, that fear. And other people are like, I have a kid named Spencer. I don't appreciate that. So it's kind of a mixed bag where the Spencer reference is concerned. But, the skate park scenario was like a tangible experience of like, what am I doing? Like, it was reality sunk in where I didn't even need outsiders heckling me. I had enough inner monologue, like, oh my gosh, I am going to break everything. Like, this is a terrible idea. Is this a midlife crisis? Like, what are you doing? But, I was there and I was growing personally. And as a result, it impacted me professionally. So, the first time I went to drop it on a bowl, smacked my face open, predictably, right? And I was wearing a Prey shirt that day. That's not ironic. And it was in this moment of like, yeah, all my fears that I had for myself and getting hurt were actualized. And that should have been the moment where I'm like, okay, so we're done with this. Let's go pick up a new, safer hobby. Or it was an opportunity to be resilient, right? Like, you think you're resilient, you think you're the hero of your story until you have an opportunity to show up, right? And I had an opportunity. So, complete with a heckling audience of teenage boys, while my face was still bleeding, I went back out there and I kept going. And I found tremendous success that day. And it wasn't even the skills that I acquired. It was this like inner grit of like, yes. Like, do you ever leave a meeting where you're like, I killed it. I crushed it. For me, that was the I crushed it moment. It was steeped in adversity. It was so hard. It was so challenging. And I doubted myself and I did it. And I'm like, I am awesome. I am so badass right now. I can do anything, like world on fire kind of a moment. So to this day, whenever I see the Prey bleeding face picture. It puts me right back in that state of just conjuring up those feelings of like hype, like energy hype. So skateboarding, it had me showing up better. And what I found was that it actually was not my life that was the problem. It wasn't the people around me. It was how I was choosing to show up. And that was a really hard thing to face. You know, I had been so ego driven, but when I was willing to be a beginner and really lean into a lot of those characteristics and traits that it took to see progress, that's when I started seeing major momentum in my life. And so if you're feeling stuck in an area, it's because you don't have progress. You don't have momentum. So, you know, we talk about adversity. It's promised to all of us. It's about this time I started an Instagram page. It starts taking off. I'm getting messages from all over the world. Like, I think this might be a thing. It's a Saturday morning, and I have a new baby, pass out at home. My husband looks at me and he's like, "You're going to the hospital." I don't know what that was. You're going. And if any of you have had to go to the hospital as an adult, the first thing that you think about is like dollar signs. Like, I'm not going to the hospital so that they can give me a banana bag, charge me $3,000 to tell me I'm dehydrated. No, I'm not going. But I went. So from the time that I walked through the doors, I think I'm fine, through the doors of Christ Hospital downtown to when they had me on a gurney, strapping paddles to my chest, getting ready to shock my heart. 10, 12 minutes. It was surreal. I was healthy. I had no heart problems, nothing in my family. They discovered I have what's called Wolff-Parkinson's White syndrome. It's a heart condition. And I would undergo my first surgery that week. It sucked. It was terrible. The cardiac wing is not a great place for someone who thinks they're healthy. I'm like doing laps, like walking laps, and they're like, "Ma'am, can you go back to your room, please?" Like, it was, I wasn't the best patient they've ever had. And so as I'm grappling with the limitations of this diagnosis and upcoming heart surgeries, and what does this mean? And am I dying? And it's like, I'm working through all these feelings. It's a short time after this that I get a phone call from my mom. We're in the middle of a Stranger Things marathon, so I'm like, I'll call her later. I get put on a group text. Nothing good comes from a group text with numbers that you don't recognize. Let me just, quick side note. Your sister's in the hospital. She's unconscious. They don't think she's gonna make it. What? On a group text. I'm sorry, what? I get on a plane with my then 3-year-old daughter, get our cheeks to Arizona on a Sunday night. So my sister would die in intensive care a few days later. Complications of a car accident. It had been a minor car accident. What? I'm not equipped for this. She's too young. She's leaving behind a 4-year-old daughter. What? This isn't fair. I'm a good person. And I start going through all the things. This isn't fair. Why me? Why her? Why now? And I was faced with the fragility of life. What does this mean for my life? How do I grow from this? I don't want to grow. I was mad. I was pissed. And it colored everything. And so the weird thing about this whole skateboarding hobby is that it truly was this conduit for growth in my life, even in the course of grief. You know, grief transforms us like nothing else. I work closely with the Crossroads Grief Group here in town. So I've led that for like 3 or 4 years, something like that. And what I have found over time, everything from working with people with child loss, tragic stories where children are killed from a falling tree, to spouses that have lost someone they've been married to for 50 years. I mean, just the full gamut, and these stories that just break your heart. How does anyone recover from that? How do you come back from that? How do you find resilience in the face of such depths of loss? How could you ever find joy again? Where's the plan in that? And so I had a decision to make because I truly felt that my grief was just swallowing me whole. I had a really great network of friends and family, but for me, the way that my grief was really manifesting, and I've seen this happen with other people, you just kind of shut down, right? Like, I know I need something. I don't know what that looks like. I can't articulate it, but I'm just going to start being mad with people, right? I'm going to start sabotaging these relationships because I can't deal with this pain. I can't deal with this adversity. And so then we're just kind of in this spiral. And so the decision for me was that I wasn't going to let the fear of the fragility of life dictate what I left on the table. Fear had told me I was not equipped to lead any kind of movement where female skateboarding was concerned. And much like, learning to skate, didn't have any business learning at 29. Now I was gonna lean into this. I had this urgency that I didn't have before. And so I really used the combination of this heart condition and the limiting impacts it would have on my life, the fear associated with that, the loss of my sister. These things were really catalysts to where I am today. So I decided to start Keep Her Wild here in Cincinnati, thinking that we were gonna maybe get a couple of women together, teach them how to skateboard. And it just took off. We had 50 women sign up in our first couple of days having a meetup group. And it's just continued to grow since then. So now we have, as of yesterday, thank you, Hawaii, we have 17 chapters. We're in 13 countries. And it's been such a wild ride. Our hashtag Keep Her Wild has moved so far past skateboarding. It's really this mark of resilience. We have women of all ages, 6-year-old women going back to college, people losing 100 pounds, climbing a mountain, skateboarding despite having MS. And what I have learned in this community is that we all have a story, we all have a past, and it hurts and it is painful, but it's not the end of the story. And when you see people that are rooted in this stuck place, in this hard place of pain and difficulty, their life is just passing them by. And so, tonight, what I really want to pivot to is, how do we see ourselves, right? How do we see the success that could be ours or the worth that we have? See, most people, they believe that they are what happened to them, right? That's their identity. They equate self-worth to their past, to their achievements, with how other people view them. But we're none of those things. We are who we choose to become. One decision away from a completely different life. What happens to us is never a choice, right? It's never a choice. But how we choose to feel about what happens, it's always a choice. That is 100% always a choice. How we choose to respond to life's circumstances is a choice. Who we decide to be in every moment, including adversity, will determine the quality of our lives. So leave your past behind and decide who you will be from this moment forward. I want you to write down on your paper a couple of adjectives that you want to describe yourself moving forward. You may not have those traits today. What would they be? Write them down. Another Carl Jung quote: "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Oof, gut check. You talk about circumstances and this victim mentality. What about the woman who was born into extreme poverty in rural Mississippi to a single teenage mother? She'd later be raised in inner city Milwaukee. She was molested during her early childhood years through her teens, and then becomes pregnant at 14 years old. Her son, He's born prematurely and he dies in infancy. Super tragic. And that's just this woman's story up until age 14. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the things that she has seen, the things that she has experienced? How could anyone thrive from that? How could anyone use that for a catalyst to greatness? That woman would go on to be Oprah Winfrey, who's a billionaire, who's changed the world in a lot of ways, who's paved a huge path for women. Her story is a very complicated one, and it is fraught with pain. Why do bad things keep happening to me? Why do the negative people keep showing up in our life? Almost all brain activity happens on a subconscious level. Subconscious controls almost all of our human behavior. The problem is, most people don't understand this basic principle, and therefore we're always running around on autopilot, repeating the same problems, the same reactions, responses, repeating over and over and over. You're in this nice little figure eight. Until we change the reactions, the responses, and the actions that we've conditioned into ourselves unconsciously, we will not see different outcomes, period. We have to learn why we're doing something a certain way before we're able to act differently, to act better, to do better. See, it takes courage to act, to start over again when you've been defeated, when you've been embarrassed, when you've failed publicly, and I've done that a lot. It's a result of confidence to continue. You've never seen a courageous person who inspires you who didn't have like a little bit of confidence. And you might be thinking, that's not me. I don't have that confidence. I don't have that success. Everything I do, I fail at. Everything I do, I quit. And that's a hard thing to acknowledge, but it's taking the time to ask why. Why are you unwilling to push through those walls? Do you think you can't? Or are you just uncomfortable? Back and examine what feelings, behaviors, and habits, what's running on autopilot? What can you bring forward into the light? What can you manage? Bring them into your conscious. Change those habits conscientiously. Program new habits. Look at that. Silver lining, we can get new ones. Better reactions, better outcomes, repetition. See, it takes courage to start over when you've been defeated. Courage comes from relationships. It's external. Storms will rise. We need people around us who say, keep going. What the world needs you. You have something inside of you that the world needs to see. They need to hear. They need to experience. It's not the absence of fear. It's the judgment that what you want is more important than the fear. It takes courage. Great. What about standards? How does that play into our success? Your professional performance is intimately connected to your personal standards. You can't have an elevated vision for your life, right? I'm going to change the world. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to start this business. I'm going to lose all this weight. I'm going to have this amazing marriage. You cannot have those things if you don't have unshakable standards and grit to execute no matter what is happening. So professionally, personally, it doesn't work like that. It is intentional. It's led. It's committing to that lifestyle. That's why we're so fascinated and impressed with people who win when it was unlikely. When logic says there's no way they can pull it together. When tragedy should have ended their story. Oprah shouldn't be Oprah. She shouldn't. She should be the sad woman who is steeped in grief, who never got over it, who never got out of Milwaukee. So why is she different? Why could she weather that storm? I can, I should, I will. What is the mentality that you're bringing to the table? Simon Sinek talks about authority and rank do not make you a leader. A great leader spends 5% of their energy on the problem and 95% on the solution. I want you to be the leader of your life. Look at your list. Are you leading dictating, oh, I don't have time. Where's your power of belief? Belief in an outcome is the foundation that everything else rests on. It can empower us or destroy us before we've even had a chance to start. Do you believe in your vision and its potential for success? How certain are you? How certain? If you have an area of your life that needs to course correct, we all do, start with your belief system around it. You know, Tony Robbins has this quote, this equation of potential plus action equals results. Our belief level in the success potential determines the level of action we're willing to take. Your level of action determines the results. Results reinforce the belief, and round we go. See, whether you think you can or you can't, hey, guess what? You're right. Because you are either owning the circumstances through your actions, you're going to find a way, you're going to make a way, or you're a passive observer, one who's just focused on the actions or the excuses. Here's a quote for you. Always been overweight. You don't get it, Megs. Megs, you don't get it. I'm big boned. My whole family is like this. I'm too busy to work out. I'm like really stressed. I'm too busy. Okay, cool. They have themselves on this path of failure before they've even started. Their belief is minimal. Their action is meager. Sporadic walks here and there are not going to transform your body. There's a newsflash. That one's for free. Write that one down. The results will be non-existent. It will reinforce this belief that working out doesn't work for me. This is just how I am. This is just who I am. Take that same person after they suffer a heart attack. They have certainty in the belief of the outcome that if they don't succeed, if they don't lose weight, if they don't change their body, change their life, they will die. That's not an opinion. Let's say that's science. Let's say that's a doctor and all the tests that go with it. Their commitment level to action mirrors that belief. Suddenly, the quotes are more like, I'm willing to fight to do whatever it takes to be here for my family. So they get a trainer. They change their nutrition overnight. They're logging food, they're drinking water. They're consumed with ensuring the outcome they want. Their results reflect the massive action, which reinforce the belief that I will be successful. When was the last time you had that level of belief, of hunger in an outcome, that you would be successful, that you would succeed no matter what? Look at your list. You have things on that list that haven't happened because of you. Not time, not resources or access, because of you. You have not decided to prioritize it. You haven't decided that it's worth the effort. Learning a new role, right? Learning a new system, adapting your customer service. What was your belief and your buy-in in the success? So this is one of my favorite stories on the subject of belief. All right, so you have Hernan Cortez, 1519. He's an ambitious conquistador. He's on a mission to capture the world's treasure, gold, artifacts, jewels. It's the largest one at the time. And it had been held by the Aztecs in the Yucatan Peninsula for like 600 years. And by the way, it's not a secret that it's there because everybody knows about this treasure and everybody's tried to get it. So because no one is being successful with this, it's now become legend across the world. Conquerors, armies, everybody's rolled up hot. They all left empty, right? Miserably failed. So you have this guy Cortez, goes over to what was Cuba at the time, picks up 500 soldiers. By the way, he's like the ultimate sales guy. He's walking them through like the visualization of what it's gonna be like when they get the treasure, how it's gonna change their family, it's gonna change their legacy. I mean, it's impressive. So he gets them all amped up. So they go to where no army has been before, right? He's got his 500 soldiers, he's got his 100 sailors, 16 horses, and 11 ships. So they leave Cuba and they're at like a level 10, ready to go. Like they had DJ Stevie just pumping the tunes. They are hyped. So they're believing they're just gonna like roll up, capture this, no problem. Halfway through the voyage, these soldiers, right? They're suddenly crunching like the numbers. There are thousands of Aztecs that are going to be waiting for this 500 dudes on a hype train. What? That's when they're having their, ooh, I've made a mistake here. I've made a mistake. So they do everything they can to mutiny. Let's turn this ship around. Cortez isn't having it, right? Like he's like a mom on a time clock. He's like, we're going, we're not turning anything around. So they land on the Yucatan Peninsula, and Cortez, his belief in their potential for success is what transforms this whole story. He gathers the men on the beach and he ignites their certainty by sharing a compelling vision of how events would unfold. So again, he puts them on the hype train. They're there, they're maxing out. But belief, it's not enough. Potential isn't enough, right? We need action, we need follow through. So after he shifted the morale, he's got everybody feeling it. They're like, let's go, let's get this treasure. He's like, great, 3 words, burn the boats. What? I'm sorry, one more time. What was that? It sounded, what? I didn't hear it. Burn the boats. If we're getting off this island, it's on their ships. So they burned their 11 ships. They defeated the Aztecs. They claimed the treasure and they left with their new ships. What a boss. What? This was a do or die moment. That's next level commitment. You better believe those soldiers found a little something extra in the tank that day. There was no plan B. That's the power of belief coupled with massive action. If you aren't on board with belief in the potential, you become your own worst enemy and the deterrent for success. It's self-fulfilling. You will be a victim of your circumstances and get trapped in this like downward spiral. Think your team won't get better? Your actions will mirror that. See, I told you it wouldn't get better. Yes, COVID made things difficult and it accelerated the need for change for all of us, professionally, even personally. But the fact of the matter is, you don't need resources. You need to be resourceful. Look at your list. How have you been resourceful in finding success? When was the last time you did some personal development that wasn't mandated by your job or school? Hang around people with bad attitudes and low standards, that's what you get. Don't know any new people? Get out there, get online, pick up a book, get some new connections. Get out of average if you want exceptional. Top leaders, they are lifelong learners. Turn off the TV. Warren Buffett, he reads 6 to 8 hours a day. Like, that dude's on the top. The next thing is move your body. Your body is a reflection of your standards. Oof, people don't like that one, but it's true. There are people with fewer limbs than you doing more than you are. I don't care what medication you are on. I don't care what time limits you are on. If it is important to you, you will find a way. You'll find a way. And let me just quickly mention that failure happens. It happens. We need to figure out how to move past it, right? We need to. Failure is not final. Just like winning is not an accident. It's not. So we know that we need to be courageous. We know we need discipline and ownership. What does that actually look like when it comes to the priority of our standards? Wants don't get met consistently. Standards do. Procrastination is the exact opposite of discipline. Discipline says, do it now. I'm the reason that I'm successful, or the reason I'm not successful is, how does that feel? Try that one on. Look at yourself. I'm not getting up on time. I'm not going to work on time. I'm not part of the solution. Success and failure are not these monumental events. It might feel like it, but the outcome is determined in the small daily decisions and habits and rituals we repeat. You're a reflection of your personal standards. Discipline equals freedom, and it defeats our infinite excuses. And I'm the queen of them. I can come up with an excuse for just about anything. It's about you having the motivation to do it. Because, motivation is fleeting. Like, that's great for like a hot second. Motivation will desert you when you have adversity knock on your door. It won't make you exercise every day. Motivation just won't. discipline will. Wants don't get met. Standards do. How do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. And then lastly, execution of action. Don't confuse movement with progress. Action alone isn't enough. We need to get results. How do I know if I'm winning? The biggest reason people fail to execute goals is being trapped in the whirlwind of their day. It destroys execution of the larger goals. So, you think you're busy. I get it. We're all busy. We all got things going on. But it does not matter when you're looking at the right scoreboard. So, last thing before we start to wrap up. John Maxwell, he's written a ton of books. It's great. He has this thing that's called the rule of 5. So if I have a tree in my backyard, just assume I have a tree, and I swing an axe at that tree 5 times, and the next day, go to the yard, same thing, swing 5 times. If every day I swing that axe at that tree, what will eventually happen? It will eventually fall down. If it's a big tree, it might take 3 years. Small, it might take 3 months. But that tree will fall because I consistently every day will go out there and do my 5. See, the rule of 5 is that it's 5 times better, right? It's better to do the right thing every day than that right thing some days. You know, maybe you go out and swing at the tree 20 times, then you don't do it for 2 weeks. It's about intentionality and consistency, the 2 most important words in a person's success. A person who is both highly successful, right? They have a couple of things. They have consistency and intentionality. See, John Maxwell, who came up with the rule of 5, he wrote 74 books, and the rule of 5 applied to him. And it looked like reading, thinking, filing, asking questions, writing every day. He talks about that people would be like, well, what about on your birthday? Even on my birthday. Read, think, file, ask questions, write. What about on Christmas? Read, think, file, ask questions, write. May not be for the same amount of time, but he does those every day, consistently and with intentionality. So in a couple minutes here, we're going to open it up for questions. But when we look at belief and standards and execution, we go places that others can't. Others with more talent, with more resources, with more access. You can go further if you are willing to lock in that belief, lock in those standards, and execute like you never have before. You know, it's easy to say that greatness and winning and loving life and resilience, that those are just for other people. I've been there. But if you can tune out the self-doubt that paralyzes and become immune to the fear of someone judging of you, don't let your environment deter you from the outcome. Have the audacity to just get out of your own way. Like, get out of your own way. Turn Netflix off. Get uncomfortable. Do the stuff you don't want to do. You might just find a life transformed. You might find freedom in that discipline. So thank you so much. I know that we're a little tight on time. But I would just really encourage you, where resilience is concerned, that it's not simple, right? It's not simple, but you can do it. Your capacity and your worth and your ability to endure well is there. So that, I would love to hear some of the 3 things that you had on your paper, what one thing you're going to dig into, and then to have Stevie as well answer any questions you guys might have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megs. I really appreciate it. I think that this, for me, I don't know about everybody else, but I'd love to take a few minutes to just kind of recap some of the highlights for me of tonight, and then have other people kind of join in with their questions in the chat too. For me, burn the boats is, I mean, I'm never going to forget that. Insane, right? The idea that you are so convinced in your mind that this is going to happen, that you are willing to trust your instincts, your body, all the training that you've put in place to achieve what you want, is so powerful. And I think that kind of brought me to one question I had for you around, do we sometimes stop ourselves because we're afraid of actually how powerful we are. Like, it's not actually about how, because I think that that's one thing for me of like your story that's so powerful is, it's what held you back maybe was the fact that you could do this, and what would all like the Indian Hill soccer moms say, right?
Right, right. You
Like,
know what's so crazy about so much of that fear, even of like from a judgment standpoint at the time in that neighborhood, was it's not like I knew them, right? Like it's not like I was so plugged into this community that would change my life if they're like, you can't sit with us kind of thing. And yet in my mind, it was this like really overwhelming fear. But also, to your point, Stevie, around like a little bit of self-sabotage, even after the success of the TED Talk, and you and I have talked about this, I have been invited to speak at companies and sit down with CEOs. It's to an extent, it is laughable. My mom laughs at me all the time. She's like, wait, are they bringing you in for like comedy? I'm like, Mom, can't do that. You're not being supportive. But it's crazy that even, for me, something that I struggle with is that as there continues to be success, I can't believe some of the rooms that I'm in. And so it's like letting go of some of that imposter syndrome to then be like, yeah, I do deserve to be here.
well, and I appreciate you being honest about that, because you talked and you opened about like bullying yourself, right? And like I think that imposter syndrome, it's one of those like coin terms, right, that we use as an excuse. Like we sit behind the cloak and blanket of this, oh, I get to actually have an excuse because imposter syndrome is normal for women. And I think that that's just, I don't know. It's something that I've really been thinking about in terms of like who's going to change it and who's going to take control of it. And I love your no nonsense approach to calling your own bullshit and being honest with yourself about all of the things in your life that you feel like are out of your control, the majority of which like we focus so much about what's actually out of our control because we don't want to take the time to have the ownership over the things that we can. Because it's hard, it's not easy. And so that I think that a few of the other things on just those small, raising the standards on the small things to win at the big things. I know that for me, I am usually a really big sweeping change person. I make a decision and I go for it, and then I'm like, whoop, fall off, right? And it's like consistent cycle, self-sabotage, all those things. And I just wonder if, the idea that, whenever you start running, right, they say like walk a minute, run a minute, walk a minute, run a minute, and you just do that for 5 minutes. Sure, it's going to take some time to get you up on that, but what does that actually look like if you're leveling up every time that you do it? By the time you get to the walk and run thing, you're going to be ready to just run the whole time. And I think that anytime that we think about the things that we can't do, just understanding that you actually can, like, and that it's your choice to not do it. And like when you fail, it's more of just a decision to like come up and step into that and own it, look and learn from your mistakes and move forward. And for you to have been faced with incredible adversity, to understand and acknowledge the power that you hold with your storytelling capability, but also I think being vulnerable in a sense to be able to share your story. For me, that it just gives me so much excitement for what women can do today, of how if we actually channeled all of the energy that we put into fear and channeled it into something productive, like advancing ourselves or doing the things that we can't do, what would be possible? And it's, I don't know, I feel like that this month is something that there's a shift in the tide. I don't know if it's optimism, but I'm feeling, I'm going to use the term aggressive. I'm feeling bullish about this concept that we need to actually take ownership over how women are stepping forward and taking ownership over the way that we're being treated and managed in situations that we don't feel like we brought a seat at the table. Well, build your own table, right? And I think that that's what you've kind of done is, you've kind of said, Spencer, I don't care if I'm not welcome here. I'm going to show up anyways because it's my goddamn ramp.
Yeah.
And, so I think it's just really, really powerful. I don't know if anybody else has anything else that they'd like to add as we're kind of wrapping up to this, but I'm just leaving feeling incredibly hyped this evening. This is awesome.
Yes. You know, your playlist what got us going in the right direction.
Oh my gosh, that's yours. I'm going to give you full ownership over that. That was all you. I know, I love that. Oh, so good. So if anybody else has any thoughts or questions, hi, Loris.
Hi. Hey, Stevie. Hey, Megs. That was great. I mean, that was really great. And a couple things really resonated with me. You know, I remember getting promoted at work and thinking failure was not an option. And so working really hard not to fail. But then there are things that I have failed with in my life. And your comment about it really takes courage to start over when you fail. So that resonated with me with a different type of courage. You know, the courage to say, yeah, I've messed up, but I have a do-over. You know, I can start over. The other thing that you said tonight that really resonated with me was your whole thing about your reflection of your standards. You know, Stevie knows I teach emotional intelligence and teach a lot about values and stuff, and values like who you are, what you believe in, and everything. But I really had not spent the time thinking about my standards. You know, so can you give a couple examples of like what would you say some of your personal standards are?
Sure. Yeah. You know, standards are something that do not come easy to me. I tend to be very heavily on like the procrastinator wing it scale. That's my natural habitat. And so it wasn't really, I would say, until I would say after college that I was feeling the pain of not having standards. I wasn't happy with physical performance. I wasn't happy with job stuff. And so for me, it took a breaking point of like, okay, I need to get my act together. And so now, you know, some of my standards around fitness, for example. So I work out every day in some capacity. It doesn't mean I'm going to the gym every day, but I'm taking some time to be intentional with that. I read a ton. I make that a priority. And just recently, a new one that I've added is around my sleep. I'm not protective of my sleep. You know, sometimes I go to bed at 2 a.m, sometimes it's 8 p.m. Like I'm just all over the place. And a lot of times, you know, I'll be scrolling on my phone or answering emails. So I just didn't have very good boundaries around that. And I've just come to realize that was costing me a lot. And so that's been a hard one recently that I've been implementing, is just around having sleep, like a bedtime, you know, and like no electronics and stuff like that.
No, I love that. And I love that, you know, leaving it open-ended for what the term standards means. Like, I think standards for me, I want to really reflect on what am I using as an excuse, maybe in a relationship or in a circumstance that I have allowed to consistently been impeded upon, that maybe I haven't communicated already. And, you know, there's things that like expectations that I have of other people and expectations I have for myself that I'm like, get so mad and frustrated. And maybe a good place to even think about it is like, where's the rub? Where's the resentment coming from? Like, where's that it? And like, how can you really level up in that? And I think that is the key. I love the term standards because I think it's a better articulation of the word potentially of boundaries, and like getting super clear on, would you allow for somebody you love to be treated this way? Mm-hmm. And if the answer is no, then why is it okay for you, right? And so like, woe is me, you know, like it's your fault. So love that.
Well, and Loris, one last thing on that, you know, there was a period of time when specifically like professionally, when I felt like it was more ego driven, where I talked a big game, but I didn't feel like I was able to back it up a lot of times. And so from a professional standpoint around those standards, I really thought about, you know, the things that I wanted to achieve, or the things that I really did want to be able to back up, or the rooms or tables I wanted to be at and feel like I belonged there, you know, not an imposter. And I, in those various seasons, really developed disciplines around, okay, if I was that person, what were the standards that I would need to have? What are the disciplines I need to have? And a lot of the times that included like skill building around, okay, if I want to be in that room, I need to be proficient with these things, and then developing from there.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's so good. And I know we've got a few comments here in the chat. One is I'm going to acknowledge in my size 9s, who, by the way, follow you, love your profile. You got to buy a big truck if you want to do big things. Love that. But I think that the big thing here is like, have you ever struggled with indecisiveness? I mean, I think that not knowing what you want to focus on, how do you prioritize?
Yeah. So indecisiveness, is a tricky business because a lot of the times, let's just use things like passion, for example. I think that that's something that can be so vague and really like imprisoning for a lot of people when it's such a trite phrase of like, just live your passion and just find your work that's, you know, your passion. You'll never work another day in your life. Like these kinds of like grandeur statements. And I can remember feeling so stuck and like, I have no idea like what that is. And so, you know, that's a little bit of a bigger scale where indecision is concerned. But I think that whenever you're plagued with indecision, that you're looking at too big of a macro view, and it really needs to be, okay, it's not the A to Z. What's the next step that's going to put me in a better position? I don't know the end point, but I know that I need to move somewhere. And so what does progress look like? And because that's really like the most important thing when you look at dissatisfaction or discontent, it's a lack of progress, personally, relationally. And so, you know, you look at even things like depression, like a lot of times it's because every area of their life is very stagnant and it's so overwhelming. They don't know where to go. They don't know how to change things, you know, and as you had mentioned, Stevie, sometimes you try to change everything and it lasts like a day because it's too much and there's not a plan. And so I would really recommend, what's the next step? What's the next step that will give me clarity to then go after that?
I think that's so powerful. There was something I saw Will Smith maybe did something a couple of years ago where he talks about how big the big brick wall looks when you walk up to it, right? But you forget that it was laid brick by brick. And I think it kind of comes back to, you know, the good and the bad news about taking one step is you hope that you're making the step in the right direction, right? But the good news is also it's just one step in one direction, right? And as long as you're moving, getting unjostled, getting a little bit, you know, getting moving, I think is such a huge, powerful thing to prove to yourself that maybe just getting out of bed in the morning was enough. And like, that's cool. But I think that also there's a lot of work that I know Loris, she spoke to it a little bit before too. Just, you know, speaking to you, Denise, I think that rooting yourself in a little bit of understanding your values and how you align your purpose. Purpose is also one of those like huge things, right? That like, if you take it for what it is, it can seem like, what does it all mean? And like, that's not what we're talking about, right? We're saying like, actually like what matters to you? And have you ever thought about that? And like intrinsically, are you activating those things? Because you could feel incredibly depleted and be working super hard against something that you actually don't really care about, but you're just doing it because somebody told you should be doing it. And I think that those small micro steps, like this is even just really grounding for me, like kind of being in a really interesting moment with the business is like, we're getting ready to do a huge lift again, which feels like that's all we've been doing is just like grinding, churning, getting going, but it's all good because it's all in service of like the right direction and we're willing to do it and kind of dig. But it's, you know, we got to keep moving. It's about not stopping moving and not resting on our laurels. It's about consistent progress. So love that. That's awesome. Well, good. Well, hey, I know we're over. I wanted to make sure that we shout out a bit to how you can follow Megs. She is ramping up big time on Clubhouse. So I don't know if all of you guys are on Clubhouse or not, but every time it pops up on my screen, I see that like she's like getting in there and I love it so much because I think that as you can tell, Megs is an incredible storyteller. She's super motivational, but I think that her ability to also navigate conversations with other incredibly inspiring people is something that I'm personally really trying to learn to get into my own groove about. And so make sure that you check her out on LinkedIn, Instagram, Clubhouse, follow Keep Her Wild HQ. Make sure you're checking out you're subscribing to the newsletter. And if you want to join, I think that, you know, I'd love for the last minute for you to just share a little bit about like let's talk about joining some Keep Her Wild events. What does that look like if somebody wanted to kind of get involved?
Yeah, so right now we have about 2/3 of our event are skate specific, and the majority of women that we get have never even seen a skateboard. And so we take people who have, you know, they don't consider themselves athletic. We get them cruising on longboards and skateboards, but we offer a variety of non-skate events that are really geared towards workshops on helping empower women of all ages. You know, here in Cincinnati, it's been really exciting just to see the growth in so many of our women. For example, I had a 62-year-old woman yesterday tell me that she doesn't want to skate, she's going to ballroom dance, but she's still going to come because she likes the energy. So we just have like a really interesting mix of people. And at the end of the day, we want to connect you in community. And so it doesn't necessarily take a skateboard to do that. Sometimes you just want to be around other women that are willing to be brave. So yeah, as Stevie mentioned, you can find us on Facebook, on Instagram. And I would encourage you that if you're, you know, looking at that list in front of you, tell me about it. I would love to hear about that and hear about your progress. I'm always amazed on the list. People always write skydiving. That's like one thing they've always wanted to do. But if you have something outside of just skydiving, like that's an actual skill, business you want to start, whatever, I would love to hear about it. And also just hear kind of the actions that you're taking. That's a follow-up that I always really enjoy.
No, that's awesome. Well, we'll make sure that we send out something to the broader audience as a kind of a recap for this. This was so lovely. Make sure that you check out Megs on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Clubhouse, and make sure that you also are just utilizing the rest of this evening to really dig into the pieces that you really want to take forward from this conversation. I know I left an incredible I left with an incredible amount of inspiration, but it's only as good as what you do with it. So it's like, you know, it's not like, okay, that was great, put it under my pillow and it's just going to happen. I would love to see you guys really take that next step forward and try to do something tonight to really try to activate that. Megs, it's always a pleasure. I'm so grateful for your time here. If you are a corporate audience here joining us tonight, Megs, she does a lot of work with corporations, as she kind of mentioned. She and I are doing something in the next couple of weeks, I think, for an audience for healthcare finance professionals. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or her, and look forward to seeing you grow and thrive and hitting the big stage again, sis.
Yes, ladies, thanks so much for having me. Stevie, thank you.
Awesome. Have a good night.
All right, bye, ladies.
Bye.